What's up everybody and welcome to another edition of AGR's Pop Culture Reviews. Well, I can honestly say I spent the better half of a weekend and a couple of days really getting to know this game again. Do you guys remember back in 2015 at the E3 event when we saw the initial footage of the original Division and how excited we were at all the cooperative play, the promise of loot, the RPG elements, those hipsters talking over the walkie-talkie, taking down enemies in coordinated strategic attacks with those beautiful graphics? Well, almost none of that shit happened. Speaking of hipsters, you'll notice I said the original Division and not the Division Part 1. You see, just because there's a sequel of something doesn't mean that the original becomes the Part 1. As in, there is no such thing as a PlayStation 1, it's the original PlayStation. I hate when people do that, it drives me nuts, they sound like jackasses. Sorry, this game put me in a mood. In any event, although I mildly enjoyed the original Division, it did leave a lot to be desired, and it made me skeptical for the sequel. And even though they patched a couple of things months after the game was released, it still wasn't enough for me to go back to it on a consistent basis. So did Ubisoft get things right this time around? Well, that's what we're here to find out. This is my official review of The Division 2. Let's take a closer look. I'm sorry, I just had to include this because this is really weird.
Right or left to toggle. Enable menu narration English only. No. Press right or left to toggle. Enable menu narration English only. No. Press right or left to toggle. Enable menu narration English only. No. Press right or left to toggle.
Now, just like in the original game, you're able to create your own avatar, and because it is in third-person perspective, you can actually see what they look like. It's so sweet! Jesus, what the hell is that? Good lord, please don't use the randomized character creation. What you'll get is a freaking abomination. Thankfully, this is a much more robust creation modeler system than before, but just be patient with it because eventually you will get your character to look something that resembles a human. And believe me guys, put the little extra effort into it, because what you don't want to do is be in control of something that looks like a ghoul from the Fallout series. Now, off the top of my head, I can't recall if they gave a specific date, but evidently this game does take place several years after the initial outbreak. Humanity obviously didn't do so well, it's kind of on the fringes, as society has completely broken down. Now, The Division 2 is a little bit cryptic about the overall narrative. It never really specifies if this is happening on a global scale or if it's just in the United States. Now, one of the really interesting things about this game is that it does take place in a different location. Although New York is pretty interesting, I think Washington, D.C. is a lot more fascinating for me, as you really get to see some really cool artifacts, and it really gives you a sense that nature is taking back the land as you see the ruins of the national monuments and various other locations that look really awesome. Now, Ubisoft certainly wasn't being subtle this time, and your home base of operations is not in some rinky-dink tent underneath the Brooklyn Bridge. Nope, it's none other than the freaking White House. Are we allowed to display the coordinates of the White House like that? I think that's illegal. Is that illegal? We have to check on that. Now, very similar to the previous title, progression in this game is essential for you to move on to other locations that are ranked sometimes significantly higher than your current status. This is, after all, a third-person shooter with RPG elements, so in addition to the loot that you pick up, you also have certain skills that you can upgrade that will help you out later on in more difficult sections. Now, unlocking skills in this game is a little bit different than before, and the currency that you really use is skill points and SHD tech that you pick up along the way. Now, these are done with various quests that you can find throughout the game, sort of side missions, so to speak, that will give you points in order for you to spend at the quartermaster to upgrade those skills. Weapon upgrades and customization works very similar to the previous game as well. Basically, there's a lot of loot strewn throughout this world, especially in DC. People were just dropping guns like crazy. Now, one thing that Ubisoft did get right this time is when it comes to the side quests when you're trying to look for SHD tech. Now, you're not just finding tech, you're also finding a cacophony of items and resources that you can use to customize your weapons. And sometimes you'll find some really cool rare weapons that are just sitting there next to the tech, which is awesome. In my opinion, this gave you much more incentive to go out on these side quests, and usually the payoff was pretty good. Now, there are some additional elements to this game that, to be honest with you, I really didn't utilize as much, but you do have the ability to garner allies throughout the game. Again, I didn't really use it that much, but just know that it is an option for you, and it actually makes a lot more sense later on in the game. Now, after playing a game like Anthem, I am so appreciative of an actual, nice, streamlined, robust map. And I like the fact that you can actually plug in a waypoint. I mean, I can't tell you how important that is, Anthem. I'm looking at you. Now, the mapping system in the original game wasn't bad by any means, but they really streamlined it here, and the UI is so intuitive. It's not obstructive or intrusive, and I just like the way that it flows. It's really cool. I really like how it highlights and differentiates things that you've already done, and quests and main storylines that you still have to do. The color coordination here is really fantastic, and again, it's just so pleasing to the eyes. This is how you do a mapping system, and this is how you log things that you have or have not done. And trust me, with so many things to do in The Division 2, it's important for you to kind of center yourself and really organize what you want to do next. The other good thing about this is that, these games have a tendency to be pretty grindy, but the fast travel function here is actually a welcome change, and something that I use more often so I'm not grinding through the same enemies over and over again. Now, it does take a little while in between you getting to where it is you want to go in terms of the fast travel, but I never minded because there are some pretty cool animations here. And because it gives you this nice overview of the map, it can help you to better strategize as to what you want to do next. I didn't mind this feature, and I actually used it a lot throughout the game. Now, one of the greatest features of the original game was definitely the echoes, and they certainly make a return here. I absolutely loved going out and finding all the echoes in the original game, just because it gave you a little bit of backstory and a little bit of drama and heart as to what happened during those key moments and key events in the initial outbreak. And here, it gives you a nice sense of supposition and some good narrative and dialogue as to what people were going through in these very turbulent days.
Couple of months, no one will even remember what the dollar flu was, like Y2K.
Y2K?
You really know how to make a guy feel old.
I'm just messing with you. But I don't know. This doesn't feel like it's just gonna blow over. People are scared. And you know what happens when people get scared?
You worry too much, mijo.
Give me your wallet. Yeah. Don't make us hurt you.
Oh, hell no.
Oh, you should have just given it up, old man. Help! Someone help us! Call 911! We need help! Please, stay with me, Theo.
Now, settlements are a new and dynamic aspect of this game, so you can liberate or bring resources or help out the local settlements, and they will be allied with you. Now, of course, the more resettlements that you restore, the more of a footprint you'll have in the various neighborhoods. And you also are able to unlock certain perks, things like resilience, cooperation, solidarity, and aspiration. Now, these will all help you later on in the game, and it is a nice twist to an already pretty solid formula. Now, here's the ultimate kick in the ass about The Division 2. The game is stunningly beautiful. I'm playing this on the PlayStation 4 in 4K, and it looks fantastic. Most notably is the different color palette. I mean, it is just beautiful to look at. Now, the thing that really kills me is that this is the game that we were promised at E3 back in 2015. So it is an incremental upgrade. And a game is really good looking when, even in a shooter, you just take a few moments to slowly walk around and look at your environment. So props to Ubisoft on that, even though we should have got it a couple years ago. Not everything about The Division 2 is perfect, however. You have to remember that this is an online service, so at times, and this is pretty strange, there are some performance issues. Now, the crazy thing about it is that there's certain areas when there's a lot of firefighting and there's several characters in the frame where it doesn't drop at all. And then when you're just in a single area by yourself, surprisingly, the frame rate drops to a crawl, which was very bizarre. The other thing that I'm very critical of is the voice acting in this game is freaking horrible sometimes. Now, the cutscenes are okay, they fare a little bit better. But the NPCs in this game, dear God, well, you know what? You be the judge.
Hello, I'm Anaya. I'm going to be helping out at the base of operations with equipment fabrication. It's a pleasure to meet you.
I mean, seriously, what the fuck?
There's still some useful tech there.
The other thing that kind of kills me at times is, unlike the Elder Scrolls Online, you don't really see any other online players. in the world itself. I mean, I suppose if you do the matchmaking you will, but other than that, you don't really see anyone else. And here's the thing, the only time that you really see them is when you're kind of in a safe house and where they're doing their upgrades and unlocks and various other things. But everybody kind of looks the same, everybody looks like you, so that's a little bit jarring at times. Now, one of the saving graces of the original game was definitely the gunplay and this wonderful shoot and scoot cover mechanic. It makes a return here, obviously, but it's been more refined and it sounds so good. The weapons sound really loud and weighty, it's fantastic, the combat is frenetic, and you have a lot in terms of customizations in order to take down your enemies, especially with all the skills that you acquire throughout the game. And you gotta admit, I mean, it's pretty cool when you see little bumblebees buzzing by your head while you're in combat. I mean, just look at how amazing that looks. Now, fortunately, matchmaking is done so much better this time around, and I really love the fact that you can actually find a player that is more or less at your level. Now, this is really fun. This is where this game really shines. And even though you're not in a group of 4, you might just be with somebody else playing, taking down enemies, and really getting into those objectives, which is really cool. And I have noticed that people aren't just running and gunning. When you are with somebody else, they are really looking at what you're doing and trying to be more tactical. I love the fact that they wait for somebody to shoot before they just go Rambo style. It's really well done, and the coordinated attacks here, even though you can't hear the other person if they don't have a mic, you still kind of understand what the gameplay is or what the game plan is, and it works so well here. Now, the Dark Zone, on the other hand, is a completely different experience, and one that will piss you off and makes you want to rage quit at times, because it is essentially, in my opinion, a battle royale mode. People are freaking dirty as hell, and you never know if they're gonna help you or hurt you. The name of the game there is about getting loot, and sometimes they don't want to work for it, they just want what you have. It is dirty as hell, let me tell you. And there's so many times where I thought somebody was gonna help me out and they ended up shooting my ass. In the back. Literally. Now, I may seem like I'm going negative on the Dark Zone, but I'm absolutely not. That is the whole point. That is the allure of the Dark Zone. You never actually know what's gonna happen. And all of us who are players are drawn like moths to the flame to the Dark Zone because you never know what the outcome would be. You might be going in there with an ally and come out with somebody that is gonna completely betray you and take all your shit. You know, there is one aspect of this game that I don't think gets enough credit, and that's basically the subterranean areas. It does remind me of kind of like a Metroid game when you go down in these tunnels. There is a sense of isolation and a sense of dread when you're down there. You never know what you're going to encounter, and it is worth exploring, not just for the sake of exploring, but you can also find some pretty cool loot down there. The subterranean elements in this game just make you that much more immersive, and it's just another layer for this game, and the way that it's brilliantly recreated here is pretty awesome. And I do recommend that if you find a point where you can actually go in the underground, definitely take it, it's worth it. Now, the previous game did have a day and night cycle, which was pretty interesting, but I think the weather effects here are much more robust. I can't remember if we ever had a downpour like we're currently seeing, but it is done very well, even though the droplets look like bullets, but it's still very well done. I like what they did here, and you can also see your avatar reacting to the different environments, which is pretty cool. It just immerses you that much more, and it really breathes life into the environment that you're in. Now, there are two things about The Division that are pretty noteworthy and have to be said. One, this is the game that we should have got in 2016 when it launched in March. But the other thing is that I'm having a lot more fun with this version of The Division. It truly feels like The Division 2.0, and I mean that as a compliment. I'm having a lot of fun with this game, and I do notice that I do want to go back into this world because it is a lot more immersive. Now admittedly, I didn't get a chance to review the original Division, and because of it, I probably wouldn't have given my recommendation to buy the game, at least not in the state that it was in. But I highly recommend this one, so if you haven't ever played The Division, this is a great way to get into this world. Of course, the game's not perfect, but I have to admit, it is a significant upgrade from the previous title. And the most important thing that you have to ask, and what really matters to the individual, is are you having fun with this game? And I certainly am. So that way, I can highly recommend it. Now before I go, I just want to thank F&B Collectibles Incorporated for sponsoring today's review. Alright everybody, so that's my official review of The Division 2. As always, I thank you for tuning in, and I'll see you on the next AGR's Pop Culture Reviews.